Hi everyone, my name is Sarah. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a PhD student in community psychology at UCAM. Today I'll be taking you through the experience of a Black trans woman in society as if the story was your own. First, I'd like to issue a content warning as we'll be discussing some heavy topics such as harassment, gender identity, transphobia, physical and sexual violence, suicide, and murder. If you don't feel comfortable at any point, please feel free to opt out of the talk as your mental and physical health are most important. Throughout the following slides, I'd like for us to keep each one of these women whose life was unjustly taken from them in our minds and think of how we can be better allies to the trans community to achieve lasting change. For the rest of this presentation, put yourself in the shoes of one of these Black trans women. Growing up, either you did not see trans people in traditional media and felt invisible, or when you did, they were painted in a negative light. This is where the negative narratives that lead to violence, murder, and suicide start. Throughout the rest of the story, keep an eye out for these icons as outcomes of what's presented. Stemming from these narratives comes discrimination in most areas of your life. From a young age, you're teased, harassed, experience physical and sexual violence in school, and this coming from your peers and even teachers. Not feeling safe in school, there's a 1 in 6 chance that you'll drop out. Later in life, you manage to get a job, but employers use your gender expression as a reason to deny you jobs or to fire you. As a Black trans woman, you're 4 times more likely to be unemployed than the general population, and this even though 80% of trans people hold a college degree. Living in Ontario, Canada, although 71% of the trans community has attended some university, over half earn less than $15,000 a year. This means as a trans person, you're 70 times more likely than a white, cis, heterosexual man to experience poverty. The outside world might be cruel, but imagine you can't even feel safe at home. When you first come out to your family, there's a 50% chance that you'll experience severe family rejection and a 1 in 5 chance that you'll experience physical violence. This too often leads to homelessness, use of drugs, and suicide. Between family rejection and your parents kicking you out, job instability, housing discrimination, and poverty, as a Black trans woman at the intersection of multiple oppressions, there's a 51% chance that you'll end up homeless. You're now homeless and seeking help. In 70% of cases, you'll be a victim of at least one form of mistreatment in a homeless shelter. Getting kicked out, harassed, experiencing physical or sexual violence from peers or employees because of your gender expression. Chances are you'll just end up avoiding these resources even though you desperately need them. Due to homelessness and financial stress, you turn to illegal activities such as drug trafficking or prostitution. 44% of Black trans women resort to prostitution as a means of survival. The suicide rate then goes from 1.6% in the general population to 41% for trans people to 60% for trans people who are also sex workers. As a person involved in such activities, medical care and monitoring is important, but you're reluctant to it. Why? Well, 1 in 8 trans persons have reported that a health worker has tried to dissuade them from being trans, and a third has been denied medical treatment. Participation in underground activities and reluctancy to seek help makes you 25 times more vulnerable to conditions such as HIV, and also means you might not get the treatment your condition requires. On one hand, through the criminalization of drugs and prostitution, and on the other, through more frequent police stops and harassment, Black trans women find themselves disproportionately arrested. In fact, those who had experienced homelessness were 2.5 times more likely to have been incarcerated. 22% of trans women experience harassment at the hands of police officers, but since you're a Black trans woman, that number goes up to 40%. There's a 15% chance that you'll end up being a victim of physical violence and a 7% chance you'll experience sexual violence during those interactions with law enforcement. The court of law also doesn't treat you the same whether you're a victim of a crime or accused of committing one. People who have murdered Black trans women have shorter sentences. The trans-panic defense, where an assailant can claim temporary insanity because of unwanted same-sex sexual advances, is still valid in 38 of 50 states in America, as well as in Canada. Once in jail, 1 in 6 of you will experience physical violence, and 2/5 will be a victim of sexual violence because of your gender identity or expression. In order to avoid this, you might be put in solitary confinement for your protection, 23 hours a day, the same punishment that the most dangerous criminals get. After all of this, you might understand why over half of trans people report that they'd rather not resort to police for help, even in situations where they would need them. This lack of confidence in an institution that is supposed to protect you not only means victims get less help, but also legitimizes aggressors as they know inaction from the system will save them. How can we help? By working on increasing visibility and factors of resiliency in the trans community. by amplifying Black trans women's voices, and by doing everything we can to deconstruct oppressive systems that uphold a climate of hostility and violence towards the trans community. Thank you.